Hey everybody, welcome to the Limestone Lowdown on video. And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Derek Chen, who's running for state auditor. And if you would like to do a small introduction again of
Yeah.
yourself, and then we will get into the nitty gritty
Yeah,
questions.
it's been great meeting you and following your campaign trail over the last couple of months, and I'm just getting a chance to talk with you. So, yeah, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to the great state of Alabama and what made you want to run for state auditor.
Thank you so much, Amanda and Jared. I really appreciate you guys having me on. My name is Derek Chen. I am a Republican candidate for Alabama State Auditor. And let me go through a little bit about my background for your viewers, if that's okay. So, I was born and raised in Southern California, and so what happened was my family immigrated to the U.S. from Taiwan in the early mid 1980s. In 1979, President Carter's administration decided that he wanted to switch diplomatic ties from Taiwan's government to the communist Chinese government. And so when that happened, the folks on the island of Taiwan thought that the communists were about to come and invade them. So there was widespread panic throughout the island, and my grandparents applied for visas to come to the greatest country on the face of the earth, the United States of America, and had to wait several years in order for their visas to get approved. And once their visas got approved, they moved to the US and settled in California, where I was born and raised. Now, when I was a kid, I always wondered, why did it take them so long to immigrate to the US if everyone thought that the communists were coming and that they were going to come imminently? And
Mhm.
so I asked my granddad at a family gathering. I asked him, why did y'all? Actually, I think I said you guys. I didn't think of y'all until a
Y'all
little
ain't
later.
y'all,
That
right?
was before you got to Alabama.
I said, why did it take you guys so many years to move to America if everyone thought that the communists were going to come? And I never forgot what he told me. He said, yes, we were scared. Yes, we were afraid. But what kind of example would I be setting for my kids if we broke the laws of our new country in order to get here? We had to wait for our visas and we had to do it the right way. And that really stuck with me.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So I was born and raised in Orange County, California, but I knew from a very young age that I could not stay in Southern California. And I knew this because I found out when I was 3 years old, I was a strong conservative Republican.
Uh oh.
And
You were definitely out of
and
yeah.
I found this out because when I was 3, the 2000 presidential election was going on between then Texas Governor George W. Bush and then Vice President Al Gore.
Mhm.
And my mom had the debate going on in our family living room between the two of them. And every time Al Gore's face popped up on the TV screen, 3-year-old Derek would jump up and scream, "I don't like him."
Out of the mouths of babes, right?
So every time Al Gore's face popped up on the TV screen, 3-year-old Derek Chen would jump up and scream, "I don't like him." So that's how I knew that I was a strong conservative Republican since I was 3. So I moved to Alabama to go to law school at the Great Cumberland School of Law.
Okay.
And I also have my MBA from the University of Alabama.
Okay, you got to give us a roll
So
tide.
roll
then.
tide.
Roll Tide. And so, but back up a little bit. When I was an undergraduate student in college, I went to a small conservative Christian school in West Michigan called Hope College. And while I was at Hope College, I was chairman of the College Republicans. And I was chairman of the College Republicans during a really interesting time. And that was during the 2016 presidential election cycle.
Okay.
So, I was watching, President Trump's then candidate Donald Trump's announcement
Mhm.
speech in Trump Tower in New York, at Trump Tower, New York, when he was announcing his run for president back in 2015. And I was watching that speech at the time. And right after he finished giving his speech, I knew that was going to be the candidate that I was going to be supporting. And one of the things that really stuck with me with President Trump's announcement was, he really put his focus strong on supporting legal immigration while combating illegal immigration. And that was something that really stuck with me. And he was the first and only candidate that I've heard that was able to so effectively articulate that. So I've been a supporter of President Trump since he first came down the escalator in Trump Tower. Was
My
fortunate.
stepdad said the same thing. He's like, that's going to be the man that changes and makes the difference for the Republican Party. He was like this, and he said the same thing because I remember when he came down the escalator, and my stepdad is like super super conservative, and I never would have dreamed in a million years that he would have been like a Trump supporter, right? Because Trump has changed the entire dynamic of the Republican Party.
Yes.
And I was so shocked to hear him say he's going to be the Republican nominee. And I was like, there's no way. He goes, you watch. He's like, he's going to be it. And so, yeah, so it's just interesting that so many people, they had that same feeling about that coming down the escalator in Trump Towers.
Yeah, I never had any doubt that he was going to win both the primary and the general election. I think, Trump really spoke to a really disaffected part of the American people. And I just was always a fan of President Trump's America First and Make America Great Again platform. I was fortunate enough to be able to volunteer on his campaign back during the primary season of the 2016 cycle. He was the first candidate that 2016 election cycle was the first election cycle that I was old enough to vote in, and I'm very proud that I cast my first ever vote for Donald J. Trump. And so was active with the college Republicans. When I moved to Alabama, I absolutely fell in love with the Birmingham area. I absolutely fell in love with our state. And I knew that this was where I wanted to spend the rest of my life. And so after graduating, I set up shop practicing law in Jefferson County, doing mostly trust and estates law. And I also went and got my MBA from the University of Alabama at this time. But I just absolutely fell in love with our state and our state's people. And I just really knew that this was where I wanted to make this place home.
Now, have your parents moved here to Alabama?
No, they have not. Most of my family is all in California.
Okay. So are they? I'm just curious. Are they?
How do they feel? How do they feel about you?
Are they Republicans?
My family is really apolitical. Like they're not really engaged. Like I am. I've always been very, I've always paid attention to it because I just felt like, politics affects everybody.
Exactly.
Even if you don't like politics, it affects you.
Exactly.
And so I've always felt that way. And so that's why I've always been interested in it, because I think that we need to have good, public servants that have a service mindset in office, because if you don't, there can be a lot of damage done to, our state, our country, just because, the government has so much power over each and every one of our lives. We have to get good people in there that have the right intentions.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, all of those positions belong to the people. It doesn't belong to any of the elected officials, even though they may think so. It doesn't belong to them. It belongs to all of the citizens.
Absolutely.
Very refreshing to hear that.
I know. So what brought you to run for auditor?
Yeah, so let me tell you all a little bit about the auditor's position and what it does. So the state auditor is in charge of keeping track of property, physical state property that has a value of $500 or greater. Anything that's owned by a state agency that is $500 or more is kept track of by the state auditor's office. Think computers, desks, drones. And I say drones for a very specific purpose. I don't know. Have y'all been following the Chinese drone phenomena that's been going on in our
Yes.
country the past few years? So what's going on is China, the Chinese Communist Party, is heavily subsidizing drone production in
Mhm.
and then they're taking all of those drones, many of those drones, and shipping it to the United States. And if you go to the store, many of the Chinese made models are much, much cheaper than their American made counterparts. And that's because of the heavy subsidization from the Chinese Communist Party. Now, they're not doing so out of the kindness of their hearts. They're
Exactly.
the reason why they're doing that is because they want as many Americans to buy those drones as humanly possible, because then they can use that data from the Chinese made drones in America, and that data is going back to China. And so
Hmm. Hmm.
there's they can spy on Americans with their drones.
Mhm.
And another really important point is, drones have a dual military and civilian purpose. I mean, you see that with modern warfare. Drones
Mhm.
are used in modern warfare. So something to keep in mind is when we're buying Chinese made drones, as Americans, we're indirectly subsidizing research and development of drone technology in China, which one day be used against us should the US and China get into a hot war. And
Right.
Right.
that's an issue that really flies under the radar. It really should get more attention than it does. But as Alabama's next state auditor, the auditor is in charge of overseeing the property inventory of state agencies. I plan to pursue on day one a complete and total ban on Chinese made drones and their component parts from the state of Alabama's property inventory. The state auditor also appoints registrars in 66 of the 67 counties in Alabama. So the
Okay.
one county where the auditor does not get a,
I was gonna say, what's the caveat to that?
Please don't say it's Limestone County that one.
it's actually my home county of Jefferson. So it's because of the way that the law is written. Jefferson County appoints their own registrar through their own process, but in all other counties, the state auditor gets an appointment to the Board of Registrars, and they are very important officials in our state because the registrars are the only folks that have the authority under Alabama law to add or remove anybody from our voter rolls. Most people think the Secretary of State is in charge of maintaining the voter rolls. That's actually not the case. It's the registrars in each of our counties that collectively maintain our state's voter rolls. So it's really important that we get, strong constitutional conservatives, Trump conservatives that understand the importance of election integrity, election security, and understand that only eligible U.S. citizens that are residents of the state of Alabama should ever, ever, ever be allowed to vote in Alabama's elections, period.
Or run for office.
Absolutely.
Sorry. You're making me, when you're saying all these things, it starts making me realize why locally certain people are in place and why they want to continue that establishment. When you just kind of broke all of that down, I was like,
And how many people realize that?
right.
Till you say it.
Till you
It's
say
like,
it.
oh, I mean, it's kind of like, what the state auditor does, right? Yeah, sure, whatever. It's like, why are they involved in that? It's like, oh,
Like I
didn't
would
know
have
that,
never
or
understood.
didn't know is that in detailed, and so.
How important that role. It's not like, oh, I'm just the state auditor and I do this. Your position carries a lot of weight and a lot of power
Yes.
that the average person most likely doesn't know. I mean, even me, like I've been kind of deep diving into some of these things, trying to connect the dots on why this person's involved here and why they're connected closely. And you just explained it perfectly. I was like, oh my gosh, like a light bulb moment on a different topic, but it just made a lot more sense. And so hopefully by having you on and having this interview, people will start, seeing and understanding like, hey, you may want to be apolitical, but at the same time, you need to understand who you're voting for too, and get out and vote. Go and vote.
Right. Absolutely. The auditor also sits on the State Board of Adjustments. So the State Board of Adjustments is a really interesting entity. It's a quasi judicial entity. And so the our state's constitution, the Alabama Constitution, prevents you and I from walking down to the circuit court or the district court and filing a lawsuit against the state of Alabama. So our Constitution prohibits that. Say a highway department truck backs into you and you have a valid claim against the state. What's your recourse? Your recourse is to file a claim with the Alabama State Board of Adjustment, and the auditor sits on that. And that's really important because you're deciding claims against the state. So you need folks on there that are going to be fair-minded, that are going to listen to all of the evidence and render a decision accordingly. And it's really important that we get those decisions right because the decisions made by the State Board of Adjustments can't be appealed. You can't appeal it, to the Supreme Court or any court. It's those decisions are final. So you have to be very deliberative and make sure that you're being fair and you're rendering a decision accordingly. The auditor also, this is often overlooked, but the auditor sits on the State Penny Trust Fund Board. And so the State Penny Trust Fund Board is tasked with overseeing investments of public dollars on behalf of the citizens of Alabama. So it's really important. It's public money. It belongs to all of us, we the people. And so it's really important that we have folks on that board, which the auditor sits on, that have good investment judgment and sound business acumen to make sure that wise investment decisions are being made on behalf of the people of Alabama. Just like you want your retirement account, your 401k to be invested wisely. This should be absolutely no different because it's public money. That money belongs to the taxpayers of our state. So we need people on that have good investment judgment.
That's one of the things that, because we have a local county chair race, and that was one of the things that the chairman has brought up, is that our tax dollars are not being invested the way that it should. We should be getting a higher return on our tax dollars. This is your money, and we are getting what do you say, a 2%?
It's like $10 million that they've tied up, and they're getting less than 2% in interest on it. And then the county's now having to borrow money for other projects,
more than the 2%. Exactly. So we're actually losing money.
They have money, but it's tied up and it's not earning what it should be. And then it's like, guys, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So unless you were to talk about it and make people aware, hey, we need people that, because until we started looking in with interviewing you, I didn't really have a clue what the state auditor did,
other than the basic stuff.
Yeah,
you know
right.
what I mean? Absolutely. And that's
Well, on the campaign trail, oftentimes folks don't even know we have a state auditor in our state, much less that it's an elected position. But it's in charge of very important roles that often get overshadowed by other positions in our state government that is ranked higher, if you will. But it plays really important function. Government accountability is something that's really important to me. And at the heart of the auditor's office, it's a government accountability office. And government accountability is so important to me because, when my family fled the threat of an authoritarian regime, they came to the United States of America. If we lose our freedoms here at home, where do we go? And so that's why it's so important that we fight for freedom and liberty here at home.
Now, are there any other roles that things that the auditor could do, is currently not doing? Is there anything that you would like to change / anything new to implement?
Yeah. So there's always talk amongst the legislature on, the roles of the state auditor's office. So a little bit of history behind that. The auditor's office used to be a very powerful position. It's actually ranked 5th in the gubernatorial line of succession a head of treasurer and secretary of state. And so that shows that how important the office was during our state's founding. But
Mhm.
over time, duties have been taken away from the auditor's office, and so like all the financial audits now are being done by a completely different office called the examiner of public accounts. It's not done by the state auditor's office anymore. The state auditor is just in charge of physical state property. I think that it's something that we need to take a look at. What's outdated, what in the statute is outdated, how can we make things more efficient? I think that, there's a lot, government always moves slower than the private sector. But
Mhm.
there's so much technology, for example, RFID chips that can be used to track property a lot more efficiently than back in the old days, where people would have to the auditor's office would have to send somebody with a physical clipboard and mark down, okay, that desk is in that corner right there. Here's that typewriter over here. You know, I think we can leverage technology to make the office more efficient, and
Mhm.
in turn that will save taxpayers money.
Absolutely. Great. That sounds great.
Yeah, you want to ask them? So,
Let's see. And that kind of bleeds into the how many taxpayers feel disconnected from how the state assets and resources are tracked. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of bleeding into what. And how would you improve transparency and make audit findings more accessible and understandable to
Yeah.
everyday Alabamians?
So it is incredibly hard to find the audit results right now. Like it should be public information, but it's impossible. It's almost impossible to find it. And so I think that one thing that I plan to pursue is make all of the audits published in a digitally searchable format online for people to see, because at the end of the day, all of that property belongs to the taxpayers. So there's absolutely no reason why people shouldn't be able to
to
easily
find it
access
or
that
see it.
information.
Right,
Right.
right.
So I think we need to put we need to publish all of the findings of the audits publicly and put it
Mhm.
in a easily accessible digitally searchable format for
Absolutely.
citizens to see.
And via all that, is that going to require working with who within the state?
What other offices?
For
To get anything done, like you're saying, I want to
Like
streamline
you
this.
want.
Can you just do it, or do you have to work with the legislator to change some things? How would that work?
There are some things that you have the authority to do
Mhm.
statutorily, and some things you may have to go to the legislature and say, "Hey, here's some outdated language. We're looking at doing X, Y, and Z," and
Mhm.
to work with them to make sure that that is successfully implemented.
Gotcha.
Okay. So it's not it's something that because I think one of the things that we have seen just from like our little foxhole is that politicians like to say, well, we can't do anything about that. And it's like, well, you can, you just may have to kind of like, pivot and go a different direction.
Or it's going to be a little
Or
work.
it's gonna be a little work. You're gonna have to put some elbow grease behind it. And,
Well, you can, but you have to build support and get that
Mhm.
thing through. And that's your job as a leader, is you're supposed to do that, right?
Right. It doesn't always have to be the status quo or that's how we've always done it. Like it's okay to advance. It's okay to do more, to do better, to
Hmm.
give people, easily accessible information. Like you're saying, if somebody's wanting to look for a report, they shouldn't be having to dig through, or even doing a FOIA request. Like some of these documents should just be publicly available to people.
Yeah, I think all of it should be publicly
Mhm.
available. There's no reason why, if you want to find, is all of the property in, the conservation department intact?
Mhm.
You should be able to go online and search it, and be able to see it. I really
Mhm.
believe that, because that property doesn't belong to the government, it belongs to you.
Mhm.
Absolutely. All right. Public trust in government institutions has seemed to decline in the recent years. What steps would you take as a state auditor to rebuild confidence and demonstrate accountability to taxpayers, which is kind of what
Yeah,
you're kind of encompassed in that.
yes. Yeah, so just make the files open. The more that is publicly available that we can do, I want to do that.
So what distinguishes you from Andrew Sorrell, and why should Alabama voters choose you as state auditor?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about the role of the auditor with respect to sitting on the state penny trust fund board. You know, it's in charge of overseeing investments of state dollars, public dollars, and I think that it's really important that we have folks on that really have demonstrated sound investment judgment and have a sound business acumen to make sure that the dollars being invested on behalf of the citizens, behalf of the people, are being invested in wisely and appropriately. And you know, with my educational background and my experience, I know that I can provide that for the state of Alabama. You know, I believe very strongly that elected officials should be held to a higher standard. You know, I think that it is so important, you know, for elected officials to be held to a higher standard, because we have to have the people, the citizens, be able to trust the government and the people in government. And when you have bad apples, bad actors in those positions, it degrades the trust of our institution. And so I really believe that, you know, elected officials should be held to a high standard, and we have to make sure that we're doing the right thing on behalf of the people of Alabama.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, Derek, it has been phenomenal getting to talk with you, and I've learned a lot from you, and I am looking forward to watching you from now until May. And we wish you all the very best of luck on the campaign trail. And I have learned so much. I've loved hearing your story that your family immigrated over here to California, going from California to Michigan, and then you ended up here in the best state I consider, the great state of Alabama, and Roll Tide too. So it's been phenomenal. I love hearing this. It's almost like a Cinderella story. You almost, the people that I know, I mean, I'm from Huntsville. Huntsville is, I'm kind of not like an anomaly. It's a perfect little town, and I wouldn't choose to be anywhere else. I've traveled for work and I've went to various places, and usually at the end of my week, I'm ready to get back home. I'm ready to get back home to Alabama, but we are, what is it they say, that we're one generation away from our freedom being taken away from us. And so I think that your story is perfect in what y'all leaving Taiwan to come to California.
It's also very refreshing that you're not a career politician, and it sounds like you don't want to be a career politician. As you've said, you have a mission. I want to do this. I want to accomplish this, and it's for you. It's not for me. So that's very refreshing, you know, these days, to hear a politician or wannabe politician to say that. You know what I mean? I think that's A+. You're not a politician. You know what I mean?
And you have a specific goal. You don't want to just like be a state auditor to be a state auditor. You have a clear plan. Like, these are the things that I want to do. Obviously, things morph into it once you take office. You see that there's going to be hurdles and roadblocks, and you see that there's going to be other areas that you can work on, but that you have an idea of some of the changes. And I think that that is refreshing, because we, as people like to in Alabama, call it the good old boy network. And I think that people are waking up and they're wanting fresh, younger faces to come in and not necessarily completely clean house, but we do have areas for improvement across the state for sure.
And you've sounded just like a servant citizen. And like I said, that's very refreshing. So we can't wait to see you lead the way.
Do all the great things. So, thanks so much. Thanks for coming on, and we will be chatting soon. So, and to all of our listeners, this is Mr. Derek Chen, and he is running for Alabama State Auditors on your ballot on May 19th. So thanks again for having us on. So till next time, guys.
Thank y'all so much. Appreciate y'all having me on.